Now, the younger teams in the NBA today are facing an unintended consequence of a lot what's going on in the amateur circuit of when they were initially coming up and going through their youth basketball development. A lot of the hype and highlight culture of just the brands of some of these AAU teams, the Overtime Elite, the Ball is Life, the EYBL, and all the other media companies that came about out of this culture, is festering a characteristic on a lot of the players that are coming into the NBA today, and it's spilling over into the court, and it's affecting the level of competition. And you can see it play out no better than on some of today's youngest NBA teams, such as the Charlotte Hornets. Now, their current coach, Steve Clifford, has spoke on this, and he was somewhat vague, but he was very direct into describing some of the characteristics of his team. But at the end of the day, he's describing a lot of characteristics that's going on around that hype / highlight reel culture that's festering in the amateur circuit. You guys check it out.
Let's be honest. I mean, it's why I was brought here, and to this point I have failed pretty miserably, is we don't care enough about defense all the time. We're better than we were in some ways, but like we're what do they say? We're a sometimes team. Sometimes we run back, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we care about guarding the ball, sometimes we don't. When the ball starts going in the basket, a lot of times we don't care about defense anymore. You'll never win. You might win games, you might have a decent year here and there. You'll never win. You'll never win a playoff series. You probably wouldn't win a playoff game. Those are the teams that get to the end of the year, and if they're talented enough to get to a playoff series, guess what? They get their asses kicked. You've got to defend in the NBA. There's never been a team, never, that's been good and had a playoff run that wasn't good defensively. And it's just, that's fact. I mean, look at every single year. Now, there have been teams that struggled offensively, going all the way back, and were really good on defense at one. But we've got to get that, and that's got to be a big part of what we do. Last year, the one thing I felt good about was, we had a stretch of 20 games after the All-Star break where we were second in defense. They bought in, we took it to the next level, and for whatever reason, we have not gotten anywhere close to that this year. But we've got whatever we have here, these 4 games left, then we can refresh a little bit and start again. This, trying to outscore people, it may be fun and fans might like to watch it. It'll never work. It doesn't, just give me a team in the last 10 years. It never works. Those are the teams that get to the playoffs and you say, oh, we got to make some adjustments. It's not going to work. If you're not playing playoff basketball all year, guess what? And it's 4 out of 7, it's too late. So we might as well learn that now, before they get older.
And kudos to the Charlotte Hornets coach for calling out his players. But nowadays, you have to look at the NBA. Can teams even fully tank? Because after acquiring some of these draft picks, you're going to have to pivot at some point, because the guys that are coming in, they just don't have that characteristic of just playing at both ends of the floor. And you can see one team this season that had made the pivot is the Houston Rockets. They pivoted off of that Jalen Green experience, just scoring a bunch of points and losing every game with no type of structure. He's definitely a product of what's festering down there in the amateur circuit among the youth leagues. That's why I say, can teams really fully commit to the tank year after year? Because you're just going to keep getting players with the same type of characteristics. And if you have no veteran presence, where do you go from here? You could almost be in a circumstance similar to OKC minus the winning. You have a bunch of top lottery picks, and then you're pretty much the 12th or 13th seed every season, and you're picking at least a top 7 pick every year. And at some point, how can you afford to pay all the players? So that's just one prime example. So imagine OKC just was not winning. That's the type of direction that the Houston Rockets kind of turned the plane around. It was like, hey, we can't really follow behind Jalen Green. Let's go out and get Dylan Brooks. Let's get Fred VanVleet. We got a great head coach in Udoka who's going to establish a different type of culture. And the Rockets completely did a 180 so bad that now there's rumors that Jalen Green might be on the trade block. But Carmelo Anthony spoke on this, that he did not want his son to fall in this particular trap of this false sense of security of just being a well-known player and not actually being granted time to develop into a professional basketball player. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
My son is going to college. Like it ain't no, like I don't even preach one and done to him.
Right.
Like we not even playing that game because I don't even want you to start thinking that right now.
Right.
Right?
Like I'm ready now.
But you start shortcutting shit. And you start rushing shit. We ain't rushing nothing. Nigga, you going to.
Does that not sound like the AAU culture right now? Everybody getting NIL deals at a very young age. You even have players like Bronny James getting scholarship offers even at the young, tender age of 14. Can you imagine that? What the hell has a 14-year-old even really proven? And some of the unintended consequences a lot of these young players face is the false sense of security, the false sense of placement. Oh, I'm a top 20 recruit for a particular summer or particular year. You see a lot of this. And then when they get to the NBA, that's if they get to the NBA, it doesn't really translate.
Going to college, if you had to stay for 2, you had to stay for 3, we going to college. We'll figure it out. We adapt as we go. If you ready to go after your first year, then we'll look at it.
Right.
But that's not a priority to us, right? I also teach him the business of the game. Motherfucker, you ain't got to go get the 200, 300, right? Like you understand? Like, because I know what you really want.
Right.
Like, let's be frank. Like the money is there. Like these kids want money. We all want money.
Yeah.
You want to hoop, but you want money too.
Yo, because
you want to get there, right? So the way you get there is by being patient, taking your time.
Right.
That's why in the NBA, you start seeing guys who come out one and done, or they go into Ignite and then they come to the league, they start falling off.
Jalen Green. Prime example, Jalen Green. He's not really falling off, but the way he plays basketball, that freestyle, just no structure type of basketball, his team is actually pivoting off of that. And you seeing that he's not quite translating to the new structure that the veterans actually bring in and the structure that Ume Udoka brings in. He doesn't quite fit in. And they also never been taught to play within a structure, a team structure.
Because they don't have a role, they don't have a place on that team. Now when you coming out and you taking your time and guys really get to see you develop, okay, from 16 to 19, like I can't judge you I can't rate you as a pro right now at 16, 17 years old. You still haven't physically developed yet. You still haven't thought the game yet. You don't even know how to move on the court. I want you, I see the potential.
Nowadays, they see the potential, but they also see the following. The social media following, which leads to brand deals real early, especially with NIL.
But just know, there's a large chance that you're going to come here and you're not going to play.
Right.
Because you're just not prepared to be a pro yet.
Yeah.
You hit the big if that was so important. You're like, if you ready to go. It's like we talk about the guys coming in and be like, yo, we only gonna be here for 1 year. How do you know that?
That's the people around them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm looking at them like, how in the world, like, do you understand? I went through one.
And the people around them tend to be some of these social media companies that came about recently. The Ball is Life, the Overtime. Now there's a whole business aspect in hyping up these players, getting the interviews, the followings, the camera guys. There's grown adults following these kids around just recording them, and they're making money.
And I sorted like all the draft classes by win shares just to give me a handle on like how many players in a given class were doing something. So this is like a whole draft class with the international players and everybody else, or I may have done it for recruiting classes. But really, yeah, it's the recruiting classes. This country produces about 10 or 12 NBA players per year. Yes. I don't mean dudes who play in the NBA.
No, that's sustained. That's sustained.
NBA players.
Sustainable.
The
right.
ones.
Where you're like, oh, I know who that is.
Yes.
Like you just start going down and you get to number 11 and you're like, ugh,
right.
Do I think this guy was an NBA player? It's so hard to get to the NBA.
It's hard, bro.
I don't know why people have forgotten this. As more and more kids play and more play at high level, you know what hasn't changed? The number of teams in the NBA.
Yep.
Not at nearly the same proportion as all that stuff down.
Yes.
So it's more people fighting to get in, and there just ain't spots.
Yes.
They're not there. Like it plays itself out with women's ball, where the WNBA first round picks can't make teams because they don't pay nobody. So the older players don't have to leave, and the younger ones can't get in. But it's still the same issue. It's really hard to make it to the league.
Absolutely.
And I can't imagine how heartbreaking it would be if I thought my whole way, well, I'm a top 20 player in my class.
You thought.
I'm going to go to the NBA. Dude, top 20 is not promising you anything.
But this happens.
That's not how it is in the amateur circuit. You top 20, you getting 5 cameramen during your games. You got these kids pointing at the cameras. Just the overall hype culture is just insane. You got like 5, 10 social media accounts that are just created just to follow kids on the amateur circuit. Think about it. How many hyped up kids do you see with a crazy, well put together, professionally done highlight reel? And then you never hear about them ever again.
Happens day to like constantly. This is happening right now while we're speaking about this. This happens this is on the clock where guys just believe, and they believe so much at where they at that moment in time that can't see the development to where I want to get to. I keep trying to tell people, man, it's hard as shit to get in this NBA. It's just the guys that you guys like and look up to and see. We make it look easy. This shit is hard. It's fucking difficult. I want to be honest. Like, this shit is hard to make the NBA. Yeah. Stop acting like this shit is the NBA is just this league. Like, this is the league.
Yeah. I feel bad for the young kids because a kid that's 9, 10 years old can't really tell. He just sees that usually if he works his way up in his particular maybe state or city, that he can get a couple of cameramen and he could be on someone else's highlight reel, dunking on them, etc. And sometimes it's just as easy as these kids dunking that they'll get a ton of highlights, a ton of hype, a ton of social media following. These type of things tend to get emphasized in the amateur circuits here in the United States. You even got players who have crazy athletic ability flying to different tournaments, playing on 2 or 3 different teams all in the same tournament. That's how crazy things got. Think about it. You got kids out here where they hype them up so much that they fly them out just for a few games, just to win a tournament. Young player psychology today coming up with the game. It's almost like they're interpreting the game as if it's something that gives them something back right away. It's almost like a reward system. And that's a bad way for them to get introduced to the game. Is that, hey, the game provides something to me. And you can see it play out no further than the guy who was ranked over LeBron at a point, Lenny Cook.
Everybody don't make it. You got 450 guys in the NBA, man.
That's a fact.
And you got 60 every year that's coming in and out. Out of those 60, maybe 8 will play in the NBA. Maybe.
And make noise.
Not even make noise. Will be in a rotation. If 8, maybe 6 will be in a rotation.
I think about the first NBA player I ever saw with my own eyes where we were like, oh, that guy's going to the NBA. 1994, and it was Steven Jackson. He was a sophomore in high school, right?
Yeah, that's my guy. Kill, baby.
Stack, man.
Captain Jack. He was actually one of the top performing guys in Kobe Bryant's All-American McDonald's game. He was like one of the guys that everybody had their eyes on. Not even Kobe, Steven Jackson.
You realize all the things that Steven Jackson had to do to make it to the NBA, and all, by the way, including going to Oak Hill.
And
right?
He wasn't even a star.
Yeah,
he was a great role player that had just a different tenacity.
And wasn't he like the leading scorer in the McDonald's All-American game?
Yep.
Like all of those things. And
of those in high school around the time, with Kobe Bryant, Steven Jackson was a head honcho. But look when he got into the NBA. Imagine if he let all that hype build up in his head that I'm the #1 dog, and he got into the NBA and he became just a role player. But you see, he had his fundamental sound, and at the time he came up, there was no overtime elite. There was no ball is life. There was no social media where people were on the sidelines with their phones and he's pointing at the cameras. You see the difference? That's why you have to look at teams that are rebuilding today. What kind of young players are they drafting year in, year out? And do some of these guys have the actual mentality to progress as professional basketball players? And just judging from the pivot the Rockets made this season, I'm going to have to say a lot of the younger teams like the Charlotte Hornets, they're going to have to go out of their ways to spend some money and to get some veteran presence, because that LaMelo Ball freestyle, just highlight reel after highlight reel with no defense, it looks like it's going to be a year in and year out thing if they don't be careful.
Knew it from jump. This is an NBA player.
I went to Oak Hill, and I went and used to see Steven Jackson's jersey on the shit.
The rafters and shit.
And I used to be like, fuck everybody on that list. Like, Steven Jackson is the guy, because in high school that guy was phenomenal. He was unbelievable,
And
man.
he had to stamp that passport a
That's a
couple
fact.
times
That's
before
a
he could
fact.
get it going in the NBA because it's that hard.
It's-
I remember there's another dude that played with him that was just about as good. He went and played at Tulane. He ain't get no whiff
It's hard,
of the
man.
NBA.
It's
It's,
hard.
really hard to make it to the
Hey,
NBA.
look.
The league.
Look at Cam Reddish. He's another prime example. He was super nasty. There's even videos of Anthony Edwards propping him up. Super nasty in high school, but he came into the NBA and he's barely holding on to a career at this point.
League is hard.
That's why, but that's
To
why
get in.
that's why I feel or I worry about like your son or like Bron's son or whatever. 'Cause people don't understand, man. If them boys get 2 years in the NBA,
Yeah.
they've done something really, really impressive.
Absolutely.
D Wade's son went straight to the G League.
Yep.
You ain't most people hearing this have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right,
They ain't
absolutely.
read nothing about it. They ain't seen it. I'm not saying that to insult him at all. It's really hard to make it to the
it's
NBA.
hard, man.
Once you get to a certain
There's different
level,
paths.
And if you make it to the G League, you still part of the 1% of basketball players in the world. That's how rare it is. To get into the NBA, you have to almost be 1% of 1%. And if you become a player like LeBron James, you're almost at 0.001.
Talking about to answer your question and bring it back. I teach my son, look, this is the totality of the game because I'm fortunate enough to give you that information at an early age. I didn't get that information till maybe 5, 6, 7 years into my NBA career. So now I can see.
Yeah, Melo definitely got the information late, and you could tell from the way he came into the league. He got caught up going into his old neighborhood, and a couple of old friends filmed him, and then they end up using that footage on a stop snitching video. And then Melo got caught up with a backpack at an airport full of weed. It was his friend's bag. There was a lot of missteps he had when he first came into the league, and I don't think he understood how privileged he was to be at that point. And also the game he's giving his kid is that, hey, stay focused, stay on the grind, because it's not even a guarantee that you'll be here. You can still put in the work, but you never know. You might not be good enough. And also you might not even be lucky enough. You can get injured.
Sit down with you. Hey, here's examples. I'm not just talking shit. Here's examples of these guys who you thought and think are the guys.
And one of those examples Melo's talking about is Lenny Cook. Lenny Cook was there with Melo in that A unit. And then he looked at Melo as if Melo wasn't nothing. Like, he dapped him up. And then as soon as Melo walked away, he's like, yeah, I beat him. Like, he made Melo seem like he wasn't shit. And this kid was fully cocky. And he was iced out. You could tell he was getting a lot of under the table payments. He was meeting celebrities. He was actually kind of living the NIL life back then. And Melo and LeBron, they even have their hair done. These guys were just straight about ball. They were focused. And with that mentality, it helped them get carried into the league. And unfortunately for Lenny Cook living that flashy lifestyle, he ended up getting consumed by things outside of basketball. And just relating it today, you could see it play out with Mikey Williams.
You don't see them up here. Or you see them up here struggling. Or you see them up here can't adapt. Or you see them up here gotta wait and go through the rigmarole of 4 or 5 years. And then maybe you get a shot your 7th, 8th. If you fortunate enough to stick around.
And the can't adapt part, that is Jalen Green. He's not adapting. And Jalen Green right now, he's at a point where his team already kind of moved off of him just being that number one guy to take the shots and to build around. So just like that, they took away the ability for him to be that number one guy. He more than likely will never ever get another chance in the NBA as being considered that franchise guy, whether on the Houston Rockets or once he gets traded outside of the team. He'll never be looked at as that player ever again. So his window to actually prove that he could be that guy was only a 2.5 year window. Once again, that rug could get pulled from underneath you just like that.
That long. And you're only sticking around that long because in this league, there's a role that you have to play. You ain't coming here doing the same shit because you coming here to a team that already got those guys on there.
yeah. There's
So how
already
do-
a dude that's
everybody
got
you
you.
score 30.
how do I adapt to doing what this guy needs me to do? Like, what
Right.
is my role? And I think that's what this generation has a hard time to try to figure out stepping into it. They think they just coming in NBA like it's EYBL, like it's the circuit, and I'm gonna do me. And it's a rude awakening because your ass gonna be on the bench, your ass gonna be in the G League, and The G League is cool, but yeah, it's gonna be in the G League. And now you gotta play with, that's the mental part that you gotta play with.
You're gonna find out how much you love it.
You're gonna find
A lot of them don't love it. A lot of them, they got introduced to the sport and the sport gave them something. It gave them clout. It gave them followers. I feel bad for these young kids nowadays because the social media following, the likes, that is really important to them. And that reward system is really fucking with their heads when it comes to the game. It's almost like a young, talented kid, maybe 13, 14, 15 years old, comes into the amateur circuit with instant dopamine. You got to add the social media aspect into it. It's instant dopamine. There's kids right now no one has ever heard. They're at a gym and they're pointing at the cameras. Every time they dunk, they get an N1, they get a layup, they got their celebrations down packed. There's too much shit going on outside of the game itself.
how much you love it. You driving a bus from Indiana to New York, from New York to Cali. Like,
Yeah, bro.
You gonna find out if this is really for you, because it would not be for me.
So you heard it from Melo himself. He's trying to avoid the same outcomes for his son and give him an overall three-dimensional perspective on what it really is to be a basketball player. Fuck the NBA. Just mastering his craft from his current age now into getting into next year and not focusing on, oh, when I go to college or when I get into this place, can I get an NIL deal? Like, there's too much outside noise with the brand new players coming in. And now it's safe to say most players that get drafted are NIL players. Their first NBA check may not be the largest check that they ever got in their lives. So for the Charlotte Hornets, they may want to take a page out of the Houston Rockets playbook and perhaps do a 180 and pick up some vets. Pick up some vets that fit around Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball and who could also hold them responsible, and while also holding them to the accountability of their development from year in and year out. Because at this point, when you got veteran coaches like Steve Clifford just look defeated. Steve Clifford looks defeated trying to get his guys to play defense. So we'll see how this plays out.
I mean, the NBA is full of all these guys that they play because we drafted them 6th, 7th, 8th, right? And we don't want to say, geez, we might have made a mistake. And then by the time they're 23, they're gone. And 2 more coaches got fired. That's just reality.